Hi and welcome back. This is part 3 of the Blender sculpting workflow basics. We are modeling a rough Minotaur base mesh. So in the last tutorial I modeled this very blocky base mesh for the torso, and now I'm going to cover the arms. So what we want to do is we're going to mirror the arms just like we're going to mirror the legs. The only thing that, well, everything will be mirrored, including the neck and the head. As well. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is to make sure that the mirroring process works really well. We want to get the 3D cursor at 0, 0, 0 on the X, Y, Z. So that means that you want to start off correctly by pressing Shift C. I cannot stress that enough, Shift C. And that places the cursor directly at 0, 0, 0. Now we're going to do Shift A and add in a mesh plane. You can see the plane coming in right here. We then need to press Tab, enter Edit Mode, and we're going to rotate and flip it up. So we're going to press R to rotate, X for the X-axis, and 90 for 90 degrees. Left click to accept, and now we're going to press S to scale it down. Okay, so now that we've scaled it down, now we can go ahead and we can add on the mirror modifier. So unlike the torso, we're not going to split this in half. We're going to keep it as one solid plane, and we're going to add the mirror modifier, which will create a second plane. So I'm going to come over here to the little wrench icon, which is the mirror modifier panel. Go to Add Modifier, Mirror, and because this is going to be two separate arms, we don't need to turn on clipping. If you do turn on clipping, it's not going to hurt anything, but we don't need it. So now you won't see the second arm here, you won't see the second plane because they're right on top of each other. But as soon as I press G and grab, you'll see that the second one starts to move over, and there it is over here, and it's mirroring, and you can see it really up here in the 3D perspective view. So if I press G and grab, you'll see that it's mirroring whatever I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to bring it up here and put it on the shoulder cap here. And then I'll press A to deselect, and I'm just going to zoom in on it in all three of my views so that way I can kind of focus it. Okay, so it's going to be roughly the same workflow as the torso. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to select a vertex. I'm going to then G to grab it and then kind of shape it. I will then do a whole bunch of extrusions to get the basic rough shape of the arm. So okay, I'm going to basically select two vertices. I'll press E to extrude, and I'll go ahead and I'll follow the general musculature of his arm. Now the more extrusions that you do, the curvier and more shapely your arm can be, which sounds great, but you want to be careful when adding more geometry. So you can see I've just got two extrusions right here. Okay, so select two vertices, press E to extrude, and now I'm coming down to about the elbow here. Maybe I'll scale those in a little bit just to bring them in so I get a little more shapeliness. Now I'm coming out to the forearm here. Extrude. Maybe I'll scale up a little bit here so I get a little bit more of a more muscular forearm. And I'll show you how to slice these again if you do decide you want to do this. So again, I'll extrude, maybe scale in a little bit, extrude again. So now I'm coming to, here's sort of the wrist. I'll maybe R to rotate, just select them, grab them, bring them in. You get the idea. It's very, very, very repetitive. Now the hands, I'm just going to sculpt. We could do actual individual fingers. I think for this tutorial though, it's just going to be one hand, maybe a thumb, maybe a sculpted thumb, and then the rest of the four fingers will be together. That's where I think this tutorial is going to go. I'll rotate this a little bit, scale it in a little bit, extrude, scale. So all I'm doing now is extruding and rotating and then scaling so it gets a little more tapered and smaller. So it's really just selecting, extruding, scaling, rotating. You don't have to rotate. You could just grab and position them, but that does take a little longer. And then I'll usually come back and just select individual vertices and just grab them and move them and just make sure they're all set. Now, last but not least, if I want to make this, if I want to give this more cuts, let's say I want to make this forearm here a little bit more shapely. Maybe I want to grab and move these right here. So what I do is I use the loop cut tool. So I'd make sure I have nothing selected, so I'll press A twice to make sure nothing's selected. I'll then press Control R, and I'll make sure that I want to do the cut going down this way. So I'll move my mouse until I see that pink line, and I'm going to go ahead and left click once, twice, and now there's a new cut line right in there. And now I can go ahead and I can select, grab, and I can shape and make this character's arm a little bit more shapely. Now you have to be careful about, again, how many cuts you have there. You can definitely do more cuts, and you'll definitely make it, more accurate to the reference image, but it takes a little bit of time to figure out how many cuts do you need. I think I'll do one more cut right here just to get that really nice cap on the shoulder, something like that. I'll do something like that. Comes in. Okay, so that's about it. That's about as far as I'm going to take this in terms of geometry. So the next step is to, just like we did with the torso, is to extrude this, the whole thing, and get some thickness on it, and then use the side view here to go ahead and make it roughly three-dimensional. So it's the exact same process as I did for the torso, so I'm not going to show that in this video. I'll just show you the finished result. So I will see you then. Okay, so welcome back. I've extruded the arm. One thing I want to show you that I have not shown in class before is, if you look at my side view here, one thing that I find a little bit more difficult is that when I'm editing on top of this arm here, I can see the chest, the torso here, and that's kind of getting in my way a little bit. So what I want to do is I'm going to show you how to move the torso object to another layer. So I'm going to press Tab, and I'm going to jump into object mode. And you can see the arms there. And what I want to do now is I'm going to select the torso, and I'm just going to move it to another layer. And layers, if you aren't familiar with layers in Blender, layers are like other pages of a book. And so I can just move it to another layer, and that way it's not in my way. So what you do to move it to another layer is you select the object in object mode. You then press M on your keyboard, and you're going to see a little Move to Layer box that pops up. It's a little tough to see on my display right here, but basically this first little box is layer 1. This next little box is layer 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way going across in the top row to 10. It really doesn't matter which layer you choose as long as you remember. I'm going to go ahead and click on the second box, and you'll see that the torso has now disappeared. So where is it? Don't panic. But if you look down here, what I did was I moved my window. I resized my window so you can actually see my front view is much bigger now. And down here at the bottom, you're going to see these little tiny boxes, and these are showing all of your layers. Basically, if you see a dot in your layers, that will tell you that there is something in that layer. And if you left click on any of those layers, you will then see that object. So there's my layer 2 with the torso. And we can always just move it back. Okay, so now that the torso is out of the way and my view is not as confusing, I can now go ahead and select the arms, press Tab, get back into edit mode, and I can go ahead and shape and edit this as I want. So I will finish this tutorial, and like I said, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to go ahead and select certain vertices, and I'm going to take them. I'll probably start scaling them in a little bit to start shaping the shoulder here and moving them around to just get a more rounded shape going down the x-axis here. So it'll take a little bit of time, but it's very repetitive. And I will see you in the next part where we'll start to model the legs.